Good evening, good evening, good evening. I hope I've caught you doing exceptionally well, my friends. Thank you very much for your company as ever. Please do smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you haven't, where the hell have you been? Chloe Dobbs obviously has been doing a marvellous job all week, but I'm with you for my once a week slot every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Although next week I might not be able to be here because I'm trying to drum up some more Reform candidates. If you're a Reform supporter, my friends, consider putting yourself forward for council because local politics dictates the national, my friends, and we need good local elected councillors. Now, what I want to talk to you about tonight, I've been incensed about one topic, and you might think, maybe it's the fresh hell that's installed itself within the sphere of politics via the Gorton and Denton in Manchester by-election. But it's not that. Not yet, anyway. I'll get on to that later. It's about actually what happened to a man who, in all of the mantra that we hear, you know, diversity is our strength, we need to protect the Equality Act from nasty reform because actually it protects disabled people. But as soon as one disabled man is platformed, who happens to say something through his disability that is viewed as completely unacceptable by the race-baiting woke elite, well, the Labour Party roll over and seek to cancel a disabled person faster than you can say Equality Act. And they did it because he said one word at the BAFTAs completely out of his own control, such is the nature of Tourettes as a syndrome. And he's been cancelled for it. And this is the man in question. So the reason he was at the BAFTAs is because of the fact that there's this film, and it's a film about a man, and he's played here by Robert Aramayo, but his name is John Davidson, a Scottish man with Tourette's syndrome. And in this article here from the BBC, mere weeks ago, by the way, he was hailed as a hero who had swore in front of our late Queen. And he says, I was the poster boy for Tourette's. Well, yeah, maybe you were at one point, but then you offended the one group that you cannot offend above all else. Because when it comes to the post-Black Lives Matter politics, the whackery and wokery, that comes above disability and involuntary words and actions thanks to Tourette's syndrome. So John has lived with this all his life, and this is what he said during the BAFTAs, in case you've missed it.
Delroy and I are delighted to be presenting the first BAFTA of the night for a vital part of movie making.
We're here to celebrate.
So he shouted the N-word. Now, it's not a word I would use myself, but then again, I don't have Tourette's syndrome. Therefore, I'm willing to say that the first thing that pops into your head that you know you absolutely mustn't say, then coming out of your head, is down to that syndrome. It is a disability. He isn't acting of his own accord. This is something that is provoked within his psyche. He cannot stop it. And Delroy Lindo, in this clip here, said that him and Michael B. Jordan did what they had to do to continue presenting at the BAFTAs after John Davidson shouted the word in an involuntary tick. But he said, I wish someone from BAFTA spoke to us afterwards. Spoke to you about what, you entitled prat? This man didn't do anything wrong, right? He's acting completely out of his control. It is like how I imagine needing an exorcism is concerned, right? You cannot control what is happening to your body and the words that are provoked in your mind that then come out of your mouth. You cannot help it. That's why it's known as a syndrome that actually causes a great deal of your own internal struggle. You cannot actually process what's happening to you. You can't go out in public because you fear that you're going to offend somebody or face this kind of public retribution. But you might remember that the BBC aired the Bob Dylan anti-Semitic hate that came out of his gob at Glastonbury. This sort of third-rate rapper who has now decided that actually what happened at the BAFTAs, which the BBC aired, gives him a free pass. He says, let's have a listen, actually.
Yesterday, I was busy, so I couldn't make the BAFTAs. But anywhere you find the apparently newly cautious BBC, you will find me there in spirit. The BAFTA Awards took place last night after cautious security planning and editorial practices and guidelines were put in place to curb any political statements and language that people may find offensive. Apparently, somebody ruined it for everybody last year.
Shut the fuck up!
But why then is it that the shout...
He's edited that because actually he didn't just say shut the F up, did he? He called for the death to the Israeli Defence Forces. I believe it was death to the IDF, that lovely old chant. But if it wasn't that, it was definitely along the lines of support in Palestine and all the rest of it. Well, the difference is, Bob Dylan, you absolute grifting race baiter, was that actually you can control what comes out of your gob. John absolutely cannot control what comes out of his mouth. So as this tweet here says, I'll explain. One person has a disability and can't control what comes out of their mouth, while the other has a choice to be a dick. And that's exactly what Bob Dylan is. But of course he's getting onto this because when it comes to race, the grift is still off the charts. We all thought woke was dead, not when you can cancel a man with Tourettes. So this is the film about John's life, set in Scotland. And look at the scores on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a video or a film review website. It takes in reviews from so-called film review professionals and then the general public who utilise this site. 100% on the tomato meter and 97% on the popcorn meter. So it's got rave reviews, right? The woke elite within the film industry, Loveywood, Hollywood, they loved it, lapped it up. Rave reviews. Until John committed an act of heresy. John committed a cardinal sin. He said something that was racist because of the fact he has a disability. So in the pecking order of individual rights around your immutable characteristics, race comes way higher than being disabled. So all that guff you hear about diversity and all the rest of it, it's our strength, we've got to be kind, hashtag be kind, from the biggest fascists going. Well, as soon as a disabled man does something completely out of his own control, the BBC should cancel him. The BBC should cancel him. Lisa Nandy, a Labour Party Secretary of State for the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, blasted the BBC racial slur as completely unacceptable and harmful in a damning statement. She said, I share the serious concerns raised by so many people regarding the broadcast of a racial slur during the BAFTA ceremony on Sunday evening. As the public would expect, I have raised this matter with the BBC Director General. I welcome the launch of a full investigation by the BBC. Broadcasting a racial slur is completely unacceptable and harmful. The BBC must ensure that this never happens again. But of course, Jew hate, well, that went away with a free pass, didn't it? So it's completely unacceptable to the Labour Party and this Labour government. And this is the issue that they're focusing on, right? A disabled man doing something completely out of his own control, but they don't actually tackle issues like the grooming gangs that are in their control. They could actually tackle the issue loud and proud for once and for all. They don't focus on the fact that we're all haven't got a pot of piddle in right now, but they will focus on cancelling a man with Tourette's because actually he's done something that is within the parameters of what he suffers with in the form of Tourette syndrome. I just cannot, for the life of me, work out how you can go from saying diversity is our strength and, everyone is born equal and all this other guff, but then saying that actually a man ought to be cancelled because actually he has offended the Black Lives Matter gospel. I find it sickening. I find it disgusting. I think that actually it shows that there is a lack of moral, of value, of respect. They don't give a shit about you if you're disabled or not. They only care about their identity politics pecking order. And in that pecking order, if you're disabled, well, you're also white, so it doesn't matter. Right? This is the sickness of woke. It's a pecking order of victim narratives. And I'm not saying for a second, by the way, that John is a victim. But I am saying that you could damn well cut the man some slack. They sit there on their moral high horse whilst actually supporting the likes of Palestine as they throw women and gays off roofs and all these other things that we are supposed to support within the Western world. The left are sick. I view it as a sickness. B says, is this live or pseudo live? Well, I think I've just answered that question, haven't I, by reading out your question. Yes, it is indeed live. And I am indeed having a gin and tonic. I've had a bloody long day, if I do say so myself. Ego Chip says, you're looking different today, Chloe. Yes, I'm waiting for Zach Polanski to expand my tits through hypnotherapy. I'll be cancelled for saying that, won't I? Retroforge says, this is ableism at its finest, typical Labour. I feel sorry for John Davidson, and it's not as if there was not a BAFTA-winning film that lays out his disability. Exactly, this is the point. This is what I'm saying. They celebrate this stuff. They say, oh, goody, goody, look at what we're doing for the disabled community. But as soon as actually that disability presents itself, then all of a sudden they say, oh my God, this is far too much for us. You've just offended woke orthodoxy. To cancellation tower you go. Someone says, not saying you have an alcohol issue, but trade out the alcohol for tea. My God. My God. Honestly, I haven't been drinking that much, I promise. This is my first one as well, I promise. Anyway, right, another Labour fraud that's really, really got my goat today is Keir Starmer. He had this to say earlier.
News this morning, Mr. Speaker, 7 a.m, energy bills coming down by £117 for millions of families and young people struggling. That's guaranteed money off bills in April, driven by the action that this Labour government has taken. We promised to cut the cost of living. We are cutting the cost of living.
So in this, because Ofgem have said that actually the energy price cap is going to be lowered in April, thanks to the government moving green subsidies out of your energy bills and into general taxation. So you're still paying it, you're just paying it through your taxes, which are the highest they've ever been. But he says, I promised to bring down bills and I meant it. And today, because of the decisions this Labour government has made, the energy price cap has lowered by £117. But anyway, there was some very important context added to this particular tweet from Sir Keir Charlatan, in which actually one of the users of X said, Energy bills are £73 more expensive now than they were when Labour came into office. In July 2024, they were £1,568. In April of 2026, they were £1,641. That's an increase of £73. That's even with the removal of the green subsidies for the windmills and solar panel fat cats that enrich the Chinese, not the British. And it also, of course, fails to take into consideration the fact that Ed Millipede said that energy bills would be lowered by £300 because of the green agenda under him. Well, they've had since July of 2024, when they were elected, very sadly, to disgrace and besmirch this once great nation. And the stats are there and they don't lie. They're not 300 quid cheaper, are they? They're not even... What is it he says here? £117 cheaper. They're £73 more expensive. You are liars. You are frauds. You are everything that you accuse the likes of Boris Johnson of being. And I think the British people can see right through you. You know, you might as well be a baboon because your bare arse is on show. And we all want to kick it out of office. I tell you that. And Richard Tice had this to say, my friends. He says, the Great Labour Con. Energy bills, household from April 1st will be 223 higher than the July 24 election. This is Labour trickery exposed as they move £150 onto general taxation. This is still £73 higher. But Labour promised they would be £300 lower. Con artists. And I believe that to be the case. They are con artists. They are charlatans. They are lying. It is a great deceit and deception on the British people. Everything that they have done since they came into office has been exactly that. And I do not trust these frauds as far as I could throw them, or as little as I could afford their fine clothes produced or procured by Lord Ali. Now, staying on the topic of reform, one of the great problems of the age is now on religious sectarianism. Now, this is the kind of religious sectarianism that I believe you would have, were you someone in Ulster, you would have grown up with. You know, I think of my friend Arlene Foster, who was going to school on a bus and she got, the bus was blown up. She survived, obviously, thankfully. But the bus was blown up for the fact that it was carrying Protestant kids. Now, that kind of resentment based around religious lines, I think is coming to the fore very much in British politics. It's already here. You know, people say that actually this is a phenomenon that's going to take place in the future because of the advent of mass migration. Well, actually, it's already here. We're suffering the consequences of that now. And we see this in the Gorton and Denton by-election, called, of course, after a Labour MP resigned after he had a WhatsApp chat leaked and he said some pretty awful things. But by the by, Andy Burnham, of course, didn't stand for Labour because Keir Starmer blocked him because he doesn't want to lose his job. Oh, I don't want to lose my job. They had any gumption or balls, they would absolutely have booted him out right now and right here. But anyway, the Gorton and Denton by-election is going ahead, and there's been a slew of evidence of the Green Party utilising religious sectarianism in its own campaign to try and win the seat, the sixth safest Labour seat in the country. And they stand a pretty good chance of doing it. I hope to Almighty God they don't do it, because I see the Green Party as a vehicle for the most genuinely divisive evil politics to be on mainland Britain since the civil war that took place under the era of Oliver Cromwell, Lord Protectorate of the United Kingdom, or then of a lesser United Kingdom. But you get me drift. And I see it coming to the fore. And it's a problem. and watch this campaign video in which actually you'll see it play out in real time. This is from the Green Party in Gorton and Denton.
২৬ ফেব্রুয়ারি গোর্টন আর ডেন্টন এ একজন জাতীয়বাদী রাজনীতিক ক্ষমতায় আসতে পারে যদি আমরা রিফর্মকে থামাতে গ্রিন এ ভোট না দিই।
আমি গ্রিন পার্টি এমপি ক্যান্ডিডেট হান্নাস বেলেটসা।
দোকানদার, পরিষ্কার পরিচ্ছন্নতা কর্মী, ড্রাইভার, মায়েরা, আমরাই এই জায়গাটা চলমান রেখেছি, কিন্তু রাজনৈতিক নেতারা আমাদের জন্য কাজ করছেন না। বিল বাড়ছে, ভাড়া আমাদের এই বাড়িয়ে তুলে দিয়েছে, আমরা দুগুণ পরিশ্রম করি কিন্তু পাই অর্ধেক, আর প্রিয় মানুষের সাথে সময় দিনকে দিন কমছে। রিফর্ম আমাদের ভাই বোনেদের আলাদা করতে চায়, তারা ওই পরিবারগুলোকে ডিপোর্ট করতে চায় যারা বছরের পর বছর এখানে থাকছে, আর যারা বিদেশে জন্ম নিয়েছে তাদের উপরে বেশি ট্যাক্স তুলে দিতে চায়। তারা ইসলামোফোবিয়ার আগুন জ্বালিয়ে রেখে যা আমাদের নিরাপত্তা আর সম্মানকে ঝুঁকিতে ফেলে। কিন্তু আর একটা পথ আছে। আমি গ্রিন পার্টির প্রার্থী হিসাবে দাঁড়িয়েছি, কারণ আমি জানি আমি কাকে প্রতিনিধিত্ব করতে এসেছি। আমি জানি রোজগারের জন্য কঠিন পরিশ্রম করা কাকে বলে, আর আমি জানি দুর্নীতি আর লোভের বিষকে কিভাবে জবাবদিহির মধ্যে আনা যায়। ২৬ ফেব্রুয়ারি আমাদের ভোট একত্রিত করতে হবে গ্রিনদের পক্ষে। রিফর্মকে আমাদের কমিউনিটি ধ্বংস করতে ঠেকাতে এটাই একমাত্র উপায়। আমি গোর্টন আর ডেন্টনের সব পদসির জন্য লড়ব, ভাড়া নিয়ন্ত্রণ, কম বিল আর পরিষ্কার রাস্তার জন্য। গোর্টন আর ডেন্টন আমরা সবাই মিলে তৈরি করেছি, আর আমাদের সবার এখানে থাকার অধিকার আছে।
Right, so obviously you probably didn't get a word of that unless you do speak in that particular foreign tongue. But I just want to highlight a few bits that really stuck out to me. Now, you see, in one, obviously it's all in foreign tongue, so the idea that Britain is a multicultural success story is for the birds, because why would you need to be communicated to in a foreign tongue if actually you had integrated into British life and could speak the language? Speaking the lingo is pretty basic, isn't it? But they highlight, obviously, certain communities. There's no white British within this video because we wouldn't be able to bloody understand it. But this one here, it shows Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, shaking hands with Keir Starmer. Now, I haven't got any time for Keir Starmer, as is pretty bloody apparent. But what they're doing here is highlighting the tension between Muslim groups and the Indian community represented by Narendra Modi. They're also highlighting the Israel and David Lammy shaking hands there. Now, the Labour Party are not friends of Israel, right? That is crystal clear. But they're still using this trope to suggest that actually they're in hock to the Israelis. But also stirring up foreign tensions, not tensions in this country, although they are being imported into this country, clearly, because it's been used in a British election. But they're highlighting foreign tension between Muslims and Indian groups abroad in a British context. This is unprecedented, right? This hasn't happened before in mainland Britain, where you've got divisions along religious lines being utilised and stirred up to win elections. And it could work for them. It really could work for them. So it's a great concern. I'm for one, deeply worried about it. And I genuinely believe that the Green Party represent the biggest evil within politics that we've seen in my lifetime. And people say that about reform. Well, what reform are saying, as is highlighted in this video, is that if you come here illegally, you shouldn't be allowed in the country. Well, that to me is a perfectly laudable and acceptable position to hold. Look, they highlight here Donald Trump's ICE which is the immigration agents that deal with deportations of illegal migrants. Illegal migration into America has basically been reduced to zero. People don't cross the southern border anymore under Donald Trump, and we want to replicate that in this country. They highlight this man here, who, when he won as a councillor in Leeds for the Green Party, stood up and said Allahu Akbar as his celebratory remarks to video cameras. And they highlight the fact that this woman is in complete hock to the Muslim communities there. But also, they highlight that they say she's a plumber, right? So they highlight the fact that it says here, Ministry of Plumbing and Plastering. She's a property developer. She's not a bloody plumber, right? If she's a plumber, I was outside doing my car earlier today. I ain't a mechanic. Not by any stretch of the imagination. It's a clown show. It's a horror show, but it's a horror show that we need to take seriously, because I'm afraid this is the new reality. This is what we actually have to deal with in this country now. And the splitting of votes across the right of British politics is deeply troubling to me, because I do not want or accept that this is the future of my country, in which actually we are divided along religious lines, which is exactly what the left accuse the right of doing. But it's the left that, through the Labour Party, remember Angela Rayner in a room full of Muslim men, there weren't any women in the room, and she was basically self-flagellating herself, apologising and saying, you know, we have to be nice to the Jews in Israel after what happened to them for October 7th. But, you know, don't worry, we hear you on Gaza. We're going to, you know, be equally as brutish as we are to the British people when it comes to the Jews in Israel. And no women in that room. You know, you see it in the number of politicians that wear their headscarves when they go around certain communities. You see it in the way in which English isn't spoken as a first language. It's a really dangerous part of our history that we're in. And it troubles me. It scares me. I don't want this to be the future that my family, little ones within my family, have to grow up into. And if we don't get this right by 2029 and win the next general election, there'll be a flight of people from this country like you wouldn't believe. These people are absolutely verifiably insane. They want to legalise all drugs in a constituency, by the way, that also always actually has an antisocial behaviour problem. And last time I checked, you know, the cities in the United States of America that have legalised drugs, they're not exactly a bastion of peace, calm and tranquility. They are instead playgrounds of drug abuse, of being removed from society because of said drug abuse, and of said antisocial behaviour. Do we want that in the United Kingdom? I certainly don't. And it got me thinking about this article as well, where green activists, this is from Guido Fawkes, are promoting an online article suggesting Muslims should vote for the Green Party to forward the interests of British Muslims. A piece on a website called Islam21C asks if Labour really deserve Muslim support after having contributed to the hostile environment against British Muslims. And adds, the large number of Muslim voters in Gorton and Denton have a unique opportunity to make a powerful impact by taking part in this election. A Green victory in Gorton and Denton could force Labour to take positive steps that match with the interests and values of people of conscience, including British Muslims, and disempower the growing far right. So pander to religious sectarianism through the Labour Party. The piece has been shared by a Green Muslim organiser to activists who say a Green organiser contributed to the piece and it makes quite a compelling case to vote Green in the constituency from an Islamic perspective. This is the balkanisation of Britain. And since Guido revealed that the Greens were sharing a video entirely in Urdu on Monday, Labour has accused the party of manipulating Muslim voters. The Deputy Leader, Lucy Powell, said the party was guilty of a shameful attempt to manipulate the respected Muslim community. Well, isn't that what the Labour Party have done for all these years? Pandered to grifters along the lines of race and religion. Exactly what they've done. But is it really compatible with a party that's led, let's not forget, by a gay man? Zach Polanski is a gay man. He goes to gay nightclubs. He doesn't drink alcohol, so I can't imagine he's any bloody fun in them. But he goes to these nightclubs all the same. He is with a man, in a relationship with a man. And their policy is to abolish the requirement for a compulsory daily act of worship within faith schools. Schools will choose to continue to hold acts of worship, will provide an alternative activity for learners who choose not to take part. Well, there are an awful lot of voters in Gorton and Denton that won't exactly be particularly enamoured by the idea that Islam would not be part and parcel of their children's education, and instead they might be, I don't know, taught things like a man can be a woman, or a man can marry another man, or that actually gays, trans, Muslims can all live in total harmony. This is the deceit of leftist liberalism. The hard left tell a lie. It happened in Iran. The Ayatollah, the forces around the Ayatollah, got into bed with the left-wing politics in Persia. And as soon as the Ayatollah got into power, well, guess what happened to the lovely lefties of dare I say, Zach Polanski's ilk? Well, they're not there anymore. I'll let you fill in the blanks. They're not there anymore. Dangerous, divisive, destructive. That's exactly what this sectarian balkanisation of Britain is. Why I stand against it, why I've done what I've done, why I do what I do every single day. We cannot grow up in a country like this. And Matt Goodwin, I think, actually put it pretty well in this campaign video that is put out ahead of tomorrow's vote.
Hi everybody, Matt Goodwin, the Reform candidate at the Gorton and Denton by-election, which is on Thursday. Your opportunity to make history is on Thursday. And this is an opportunity to push back against Hannah Spencer and the Greens, who are obsessed with Gaza. They are obsessed with the Muslim vote. They are campaigning in Urdu and Punjabi. They're not interested in Gorton and Denton. They're interested in what's happening in faraway lands. I'm the only candidate at this by-election who is actually going to prioritise Gorton and Denton, the people from Gorton and Denton. I'm the only candidate who will stand up in the House of Commons and not obsess about Gaza, but actually say Gorton and Denton, Gorton and Denton, Gorton and Denton, and bring the respect and recognition and representation that this area desperately needs, and which Labour completely disregarded for decades. Vote Reform UK, get rid of Keir Starmer and put Gorton and Denton where it belongs, which is first.
I don't think that you could put a better message. So he says, Reform will put the people of Gorton and Denton first, not Gaza, not the Muslim vote, not the Labour Party, but Gorton and Denton, which, by the way, does include Muslims. That used to be the aims of the left, did it not? Of race activists, of religious activists, that no matter what, your colour, your creed, your religion, we would all be treated the same. But now we have competing groups within society in their own silos, and Reform is the antidote to that. I think that's a beautiful message. It's one I support entirely. So good for Matt Goodwin. And I saw this tweet from a guy I follow, Mike Jones. He said, if you vote for the Green Party, you genuinely hate the United Kingdom and its historic population. There is nothing else I can say. There are no excuses. Polanski is crystal clear on what he stands for. So if you vote Green, I'm going to come down on you like a ton of bricks. You are an enemy of this country, plain and simple. Look, there are a lot of young people who are desperate. They cannot get a job. They cannot get a house. They cannot get a whole host of things. They cannot even dream of starting a family. Who are voting Green because they tell them that all of these things can be resolved by them. I get that. I get that desperation. So I'm not going to sit here and slag off all of Green Party voters. But I will say that, and I reiterate, they are the most dangerous element in British politics today. I mean that with every fibre of my being, with every part of my little heart. And the facts of the matter are there. They're there for all to see. We are in a new era of British politics. I saw this in a by-election that took place a few years ago now, in which Kim Ledbetter, who is the sister of the murdered MP Joe Cox, Labour MP, and she was stood for election in the Batley and Spen by-election that took place. Now, Batley and Spen was, of course, at the heart of you remember the Batley Grammar School teacher, still in hiding today, that showed a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad, had to go into hiding for fear of his family, their safety being completely jeopardised by the fact that he had shown this cartoon. And I went there to do a bit of filming within the constituency, and George Galloway was standing, a man who I think is, again, an obnoxious, evil element within politics. There are far too many on the right who are particularly enamoured by what he has to say. I am not. I think he's evil. And he was going along the lines of pandering to the Muslim vote, saying exactly this sort of thing. And there were even activists out there that were saying, well, Kim Ledbetter is a lesbian, which she is, and therefore you cannot vote for a lesbian. But no one, not even the Labour Party, defended the Batley Grammar School teacher. No one stood up for him. They instead pandered to the religious sectarianism within British life today. It is an evil, obnoxious element, and it's getting worse. It's suffocating the body politic of the country, and we're letting it happen. We've got to vote right. We've got to unite. Unite the right. Vote, in my view, Reform, the only party with the recognition, the brand, and the infrastructure to be able to do it, and do it by 2029. But, right, moving on to another issue that actually caught my eye that is slightly relevant here. The Royal Mint, the original maker of those little bits of gold and all the rest of it that you'll see. Well, the Royal Mint have partnered with Islamic Relief for Ramadan 2026 with new gold Kaaba bars. 2.5% of all online sales of revenue from 1 gram to 5 grams of gold bars sold throughout Ramadan will be donated to Islamic Relief UK. Why? Why? Why are we doing this? There is just a genuflection, a bending of the knee across the British state, isn't there? That I cannot for the life of me understand why we're doing this. Who do we feel that we're appeasing? Well, one woman who said that I'm not going to appease was Esther McVey, who stood up in the House of Commons and said this.
A bill to introduce compulsory labelling of halal and kosher meat and products containing halal and kosher meat and for connected purposes. Mr. Speaker, this is a bill about animal welfare, transparency in meat production and consumer choice. It does not seek to ban halal or kosher meat, it seeks to ensure they are clearly labelled. It is important consumers have such information so they can make an informed choice about what they are buying. And currently, consumers do not have that information, and many are purchasing and consuming halal and kosher meat without their knowledge and without their agreement. The unique process of halal and kosher meat requires the animal to have its throat slit. In the case of halal meat, the animal is often stunned before it's killed, although it might not be, and for the shahita killing, for kosher meat, there is no pre-stunning. This lack of stunning causes the animal to experience severe pain. An individual concerned about animal welfare would want to know if an animal has been stunned prior to slaughter.
And I think actually many British people who love animals, they love animals more than humans in many cases, that actually they would like to see this happen. She's Esther McVey, a Conservative MP, has called for a law to label halal and kosher meat so people can decide not to buy it, not to eat it. Individuals concerned about animal welfare would want to know if an animal had been stunned prior to slaughter. And my friend Sarah Poach, an MP from Reform UK, said this is not about banning halal or kosher meat. Some of you I know would like to do that, but she says this is about giving people an informed choice as to what they are buying and what they are eating. She says, I fully support it and was a signatory to this bill from Esther McVey. Now, of course, true to form, Esther McVey received tweets saying that that actually, well, the one that I did see said that it already is labelled halal and kosher is more expensive, so the problem solves itself. But actually, it ain't, my friends. It ain't. There is the fact of the matter that you have to actually see that in supermarkets, you know, I don't recall, do you recall seeing it anywhere? It wouldn't be obvious, would it? But it should be labelled in an obvious way so that consumers can actually decide. And I said this, do you remember the debate about chlorinated chicken, how we shouldn't have a trade deal with the United States of America because they use chlorinated wash to clean their chicken, get rid of bacteria from chicken. And there was an argument that we shouldn't do a trade deal with America because chlorinated chicken would enter the UK market. Well, I said, why don't we just force it to be labelled in the United Kingdom so that consumers can say, okay, this chicken is US chlorinated chicken. I don't want to eat that, therefore I'm not going to buy it. Okay, this is halal chicken. Its throat has been slit. I'm not going to buy that. I don't want to as a consumer, and I certainly don't want to eat it. Fine. Why can't we just have informed choice at the supermarket instead of being deceptive about what it is that you're actually buying and putting in your mouth? I think that's fair enough. And I think many of you will think that's fair enough too. So, you know, good for Esther McVey. Now, you know, I did mention the Green Party earlier. And I have to show you the Prat of the Week, but I'm going to do that actually after this. I'm going to do that shortly. But I need to let you hear this woman in Gorton and Denton, a Labour voter all her life. Have a listen to what she had to say.
So can I ask you who you're voting for next week?
Well, I normally vote for Labour, but I'm going for Reform.
Okay, so why have you changed?
Because I don't think Labour's done good for us this time. Certain things what they did promise and they've not come over with it.
Yeah, and they've U-turned.
Yeah, I have always voted Labour, so...
And this is the first time going to Reform. Do you think you would have stayed with Labour if Andy Burnham was the candidate?
No.
The Green Party are doing quite well.
No, I didn't, no.
So can I ask you who...
The right response. What a woman. What a woman. Make her Prime Minister. Tell you what, she'll do a damn sight better than the bloody clowns that we've got in running the circus right now. But I think that actually she speaks for so many working class communities. She certainly speaks for those in County Durham that have felt betrayed by Labour, belittled, besmirched, called racist, called fascist, called Nazis, for voting for Brexit, for voting for reform, for voting for whoever else. So she's right. I think it was a beautiful intervention, and I hope the people of Gorton and Denton actually do listen to her, because if not, my colleague, the Reform MP, Danny Kruger, says if we don't win, or if we win and make a mess of it, I fear for our country. He says that he fears that actually there will be, he didn't explicitly say civil war, but he harks on to what Dominic Cummings said, fears for his country, and I think that that's totally fair enough. I fear for my country if we don't get this right, for all the reasons that I've just mentioned, along the lines of religious sectarianism, right? If we don't get this right, if we are balkanized and people feel that the ballot box is broken, they vote for a reduction in mass migration every single election since I was born, by the way, that was 32 years ago, then what do people do in desperation? If the ballot box doesn't work, if the vote doesn't work, people tend to reach for more extreme ends. And I'm not advocating that. I'm saying I don't want it to happen. So I'm saying that we do need to take the anti-democratic nature of the transformation of Britain into consideration. And Danny has been criticised for saying this, by the way. But I do argue that we are more divided than we have been since the English Civil War. So how much further do we have to go until we actually wake up and recognise what is happening in the United Kingdom? I think Danny's got a perfect point. A perfect point. Now, you might remember the case of Grace O'Malley, who was murdered alongside two others. And I did a tweet about this yesterday in which I highlighted this man who is serving a sentence.
Gorton or Denton ek zulm siyas
he's in a mental hospital. Am I allowed to call it a mental hospital these days? I don't actually know anymore, but anyway, I just did. And I'll get that tweet up for you now. So he is called Valdo Calcone, a man who went on to murder 3 innocent people, and he was released by mental health workers, it was announced, because they were worried that detaining him might be racist. It's exactly the same excuse that they used allowing the perpetrators of the rape gangs, the grooming gangs, to go ahead untrammeled, unchecked, unpoliced, because they were worried about accusations of racism. So Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Kumar and Ian Coates their lives were extinguished because of institutional cowardice and a twisted sense of justice. And this is the evil man here. Grace's dad, Grace O'Malley Kumar's dad, Dr. Sanjoy Kumar, had this to say on GB News yesterday, and have a listen because it chilled me to the bone.
GPs like me who work in the community have been listening to this with absolute horror. So the first sectioning doctors have said through their representatives that they were reluctant to section Baldo Calacane because he was black, and because the Royal College of Psychiatrists has this sort of mantra that there are too many black people being sectioned, and everyone who's sectioning people has to look at this. It just kind of blows my mind as a doctor. What I have heard from colleagues who are psychiatrists, they also can't quite believe the fact that all of this stuff about race keeps getting suppressed by the Royal College, and they literally are just into demography rather than illness. Can I just say, as an Asian man, I'm more prone to getting diabetes. But should that mean you shouldn't say to me that, Sanjo, I tell you what, you're Asian, you're more prone to diabetes than someone else? In the same way, if someone is of an Afro-Caribbean race is prone to having symptoms of schizophrenia, we should just be open and transparent about it.
And I think that that's a perfectly fair statement and assessment to make. And this is common sense from a man who has gone through pain and anguish on a scale that many of us will, fortunately and God hopefully, never ever have to experience, in which your young, beautiful daughter, which Grace O'Malley Kumar clearly was, and a brave woman at that, by the way, the act of heroism that she committed in trying to help her friends from being stabbed by this monster, who was from a foreign country, by the way, not our problem, but became our problem. I think for him to be able to make a coherent argument like this in the face of such anguish is phenomenal. He is a phenomenal man. But what he says there is that the sector within healthcare, psychology, are saying that actually they're so scared of being accused of racism that they can't have too many black people going through mental health services being sectioned because they'll be called racist. Can't you see the level of psychosis that is seeped into the British state, where people who genuinely are a threat to the public, as this man was actually seen to be on several occasions, who was allowed to walk free and do what he did, because people are sickened and with fear of being accused of racism? I don't give a flying flamingo about accusations of racism. I give a flying flamingo about the protection and safety of our women and girls and young men like Barney, who lost his life. What kind of sick ideology actually puts the safety of the public below your fear of an accusation of racism as a sector? They're not fit to be doctors. They're cowards, utterly supine. They have been, in my view, responsible for what happened. Grace would be alive today. That man, Mr. Dr. Kumar, would be with his daughter today had it not been for these so-called healthcare professionals that have allowed this man to walk free because they're scared of being called racist. It is pathetic, it is perverse, and it is a complete and utter dereliction of your duty as a doctor. You ought to be down. I don't know how these people can sleep at night, to be perfectly frank. But on lighter news that I covered last week, there was this police officer yesterday who stood up to a mob of Muslim men who were telling her that actually a preacher, a Christian preacher, wasn't allowed to say what he was saying. And she said, actually, we've got free speech in this country. And I thought, good for you, girl. You know, there aren't many police officers that would say that these days. And I had tweeted last week saying, the police officer's clarity in defence of free speech in the face of intimidation by a mob of men is both laudable and encouraging. We need officers like this to be promoted, and those who argue communities can self-police, as we saw, by the way, in Birmingham, to absolutely not. Well, a week later, I was proven that to be right on the fact that the police are institutionally captured, because there was a man who was wearing a billboard that read, there is no such thing as a transgender child. And police at Highbury and Islington tube station said he had broken the law and that his distress was hate speech and causing alarm and distress. So,
okay. Hello, how are you doing?
Okay.
Yes.
We've had numerous calls.
Yep.
Obviously about your sign in particular. People might see it as spreading like some kind of like hate speech and might be feeling some kind of harassment from it. I was just wondering what you were doing here today. That's basically having a conversation with you at the moment.
Do you see this as hate speech?
I'm not asking about my opinion. I'm asking why you're here, what your rationale is, what you're trying to get from it.
Well, I go up and down the country Okay, with these signs on, there's nothing hateful about what's on these signs. I'm saying there's no such thing as a transgender child. That's a fact. And on the back, there, trans women are men. That's a fact. Okay, so I go out and have conversations with people. Okay.
There is quite literally absolutely nothing wrong with what this man has said, with what this man is advertising on his billboard, on his person. And the question, let's just repeat the question that the officer actually asks.
You were doing it today, that's basically it's having I was just wondering what you were doing it today, that's basically it's having a conversation with.
Well, I think it's pretty damn well obvious what he's doing, isn't it? He's advertising a point of view. We are meant to be a country that has freedom of expression. That's his view. Has been a medicalisation of children, in which children perfectly normally going through puberty decide they don't like their own bodies and would quite like to stop puberty from happening. And instead of saying, you'll get over this, you're going through puberty, this is totally normal, we instead medicalise our children through generally irreversible puberty blockers and hormone treatments. Now, it's a madness. So this man has a right to say that, in my view. Trans women are indeed men. If you are born a biological man, well, your biology is immutable, and therefore you are a man. That is also dare I say, immutable truth and fact. So it's not a police matter, in my view. So I've gone from, in a week, saying that actually this police officer ought to be promoted and celebrated, to instead saying this clown come forward and actually prove herself and the Met Police to be completely captured by institutional whackery and wokery over law and order. God help us, my friends. God help us. And I'm running out of time, so I just want to go back very quickly to the Labour Party. And it's following on from the trans issue, funnily enough. And Bridget Phillipson has been on the media round actually several times this week, and she is the Education Secretary. And very troublingly, the Education Secretary had this to say to Nick Ferrari on LBC.
Can a 5-year-old go to school and decide that he wants to be called by a girl's name and that he is a she? Are you comfortable with that?
We've been clear that in primary schools we need to tread with a lot of care.
That didn't actually answer the question, Secretary. Are you comfortable with that?
Well, this was usually where it involves a parent's decision to support their child in that way. So part of the balance here is that, of course, often parents will be supporting. But the child could just tip up at school, couldn't he or she? Well, we think this. Did
you know? Does everyone know at 5 whether they want to be a man or a woman?
No. That's part of what actually Hilary Cass said in her review, that in allowing children just to consider who they are, to behave in ways that might not be aligned with their sex, or their gender. Mm-hmm. So if a boy wants to wear dresses, we should just, if we allow that to work, children will experiment at different points. They will consider who they are. That just taking a watchful approach, not coming down too hard on that, actually reduces what we see in terms of children moving towards a more medicalised model. And the guidance that we've published, Dr. Hilary Cass has welcomed. She thinks it's the right approach in supporting children and their well-being. And I think it would be exceptionally rare for primary schools to be operating that. But I've also been clear that in anything in that space, unless there are very strong safeguarding reasons where a child is at risk of harm, parents should be involved in those important decisions.
So just to read out her quote, if a primary school boy wants to wear dresses, we should just, if we allow that to work, children will experiment at different points. They will consider who they are. Well, children, for one, should be wearing their damn uniform, and boys are boys and girls are girls. And we have to stop with this gender pandering, right? Over actual acknowledgement and acceptance. And she says that this would prevent children from going through a more medicalised pathway. You're in government. Ban the medical pathway. Children are not guinea pigs. They are not experimentations for trans ideology. Children ought to be allowed to be children. I wanted to be Harry Sodding Potter when I was growing up. I wasn't allowed to walk around in a nice Hogwarts kit. I had to wear the school kit. I would have quite liked to have been a Jedi as well. I wasn't allowed, funnily enough, to walk around with a sword. The insanity and lack of common sense from these people is just totally off the charts. And my friends, I have to end with a funny note. My prat of the week is this man, who I've no doubt votes for the Green Party, but actually I think he is a entitled prat and everything that is wrong with his generation.
I didn't pay for a train fare, and the guy was like, you got to get off the train, and I said, no. And now we're moving again. You are free. I said, where was my agreement that I had to pay to live, that I had to pay to travel? Because we are born free, right? Human beings are born free. Look at every animal. They don't have to pay to live, so why do I have to pay? Show me my agreement. If we have an agreement that I agreed to pay to live, then let's put it on the table. But we ain't got that fucking agreement, you hear me? We ain't got that agreement. So now what? Yeah, so we're moving, and he can do shit because you can't fuck with the truth. The truth is the truth. There's nothing you can do about it. I love you. Be free. You are free. You are not a slave. You are a divine soul. I love you so much, bro. Can't stop the truth. I didn't pay for
a hippie Green Party voting, no doubt, vegan there with his scruffy hair, scruffy appearance, putting on an accent there, actually saying that there ain't no agreement that you have to pay or you didn't agree to pay. Well, actually, you are using the service of a train, and the service of that train have terms and conditions that if you utilise their service, you have to present a ticket. That ticket has to be paid for. The inspector can't do anything about it because the inspector is worried that they'll actually be lose their job if they intervene on this person too strongly. And the police don't do anything because obviously the police only show up if you are saying something, I don't know, about trans people or whatever else, some speech crime. It's part of the terms and conditions, you entitled sanctimonious prat. You know, this hippie bullshit is actually responsible for the degradation of society and the total collapse of moral norms. So he is my prat of the week, and I do not wish him well, and I hope that this generation can be snapped out of this complete and utter entitled psychosis that they're living through. And my friends, on that bombshell, I wish you a glorious rest of your evening and a very peaceful night. I'll see you on the next one. Good night and God bless. Oh, like and subscribe if you haven't already, my friends.